What if I told you that every great civilization doesn't collapse in an explosion, but in silence? Not with war or fire, but with laughter, with memes, with slogans, with the slow death of thinking. Civilizations don't fall when they're attacked from the outside. They fall when the mind goes dark on the inside. The Romans had aqueducts. The Maya had mathematics. The Chinese had fleets that reached Africa. And yet, all collapsed. Not because they lacked brilliance, but because they stopped honoring it. Because slowly, over generations, something poisonous spread through the culture. People stopped asking hard questions and started worshiping easy answers. They traded wisdom for comfort, discipline for pleasure, and most dangerously, they replaced critical thinking with emotional belief. Socrates warned us 2,400 years ago. He said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Athens responded by executing him. Why? Because truth is uncomfortable. Because questions are dangerous in a society addicted to certainty. Because comfort, not wisdom, becomes the god of decaying empires. Today, we don't poison philosophers, we unfollow them. We don't burn books, we ignore them. We don't silence voices with swords, we bury them in the noise of entertainment. We are not facing something new. We are replaying the oldest tragedy in human history. The moment when a society becomes so entertained it forgets how to think. Look around. Anti-intellectualism is no longer a fringe problem. It's a cultural epidemic, where experts are called elites. Science is mocked. And do your own research means watching 15-second TikToks. This is not ignorance. This is willful ignorance, a choice to stay blind because seeing might hurt. And civilizations cannot survive that choice. Because when the mind dies, the empire follows. If the death of critical thinking is the beginning of civilizational decay, then the rise of short-term narcissism is the fuel that accelerates it. This is the phase where long-term vision dies, where me replaces we, where now becomes more important than tomorrow, where short dopamine hits outweigh deep meaning. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming. He warned of a future filled with last men. Comfortable, entertained, shallow people who ask, "What is love? What is creation? What is longing?" And then blink, because they can no longer grasp anything that requires depth. He wrote, "They have left the regions where it was hard to live, for one needs warmth. They still love their neighbor and rub against him, for they need warmth. Becoming sick and making others sick, that they consider wicked." He called them the end of history, a species that no longer dreams. It sounds poetic, but look around. Everywhere, our systems reward instant gratification. Social media built for outrage and virality. Economies driven by quarterly profits. Politicians addicted to election cycles. Lives reduced to likes, swipes, and next-day delivery. We are starving for depth while gorging on novelty. This isn't just personal, it's civilizational. Remember the Maya? Brilliant astronomers, mathematicians, builders of cities that lasted centuries. And yet, when faced with environmental collapse, they chose short-term luxury over long-term survival. They knew the forests were dying, the soil was thinning, but their leaders kept expanding, building, celebrating. They could calculate eclipses to the hour, but they couldn't do the most basic thing: stop. Sound familiar? We're doing the same with climate change, with rising oceans, with resource collapse. We have all the data, all the science, but we can't stop, because short-term gain feels better than long-term caution. This is how civilizations die, not with a bang, but with a shrug. And the terrifying part? We don't even feel guilty. We call it progress. We call it growth. We call it freedom. But what good is freedom if it kills our future? If short-term narcissism is the fuel, then the rejection of expertise is the match. This is when civilizations don't just ignore wisdom. They mock it. They replace it. They burn it down and call it freedom. Carl Sagan saw this coming decades ago. He warned, "We've arranged a civilization based on science and technology, in which nobody understands science and technology. That's a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly where we are now. The world runs on technology, but distrusts technologists. The world needs science, but ridicules scientists. The world demands progress, but silences the minds that build it. We've created a society that's addicted to convenience, but allergic to expertise. During the COVID-19 pandemic, this crisis came into sharp focus. The most advanced medical systems in history, overruled by conspiracy theories and Facebook memes. Doctors were called liars. Virologists were threatened. A horse dewormer trended more than actual medicine. Let that sink in. People trusted TikTok over the World Health Organization. Why? Because we no longer understand how to tell truth from noise. We don't know how to evaluate evidence. So we fall back on what feels true instead of what is true. This isn't just ignorance. This is active hostility toward knowledge. It's the same pattern that destroyed the Ming dynasty. Centuries ago, China had the most advanced ships in the world. Their fleets reached Africa before Columbus was born. But then new emperors came into power, and they didn't like new ideas. They banned ocean voyages, burned maps, dismantled their own fleets. In the name of tradition, they shut down the future. And within a century, the West had passed them entirely. The Ming didn't fall to enemies. They fell to fear of the unknown. And today, we're making the same mistake. Not by banning ships, but by drowning in noise and calling it freedom. Here's the truth. Expertise is not elitism. It's the reason airplanes fly. The reason we survived polio. The reason your phone works. But when we reject expertise, we're not sticking it to the elites. We're destroying our own lifeboat. The real danger isn't ignorance. It's arrogance. The belief that we know better without knowing anything at all. Not all civilizations collapse. Some wake up. Some choose the harder path, the path of renewal. You've heard the doom. Now here's the possibility. History shows that decline is not destiny. Rome fell, but Florence rose. The Maya collapsed, but the Renaissance emerged. Civilizations don't die from ignorance alone. They die when people stop fighting ignorance. The Renaissance didn't happen by accident. It happened because individuals chose to question, to think again, to value wisdom even when it was inconvenient. They rediscovered ancient texts. They funded philosophers and scientists. They built printing presses that made truth faster than lies. They made critical thinking cool again. But here's the part most people forget. It wasn't just art and science. It was institutions that supported long-term thought. Universities, libraries, scientific academies, places that preserved thinking through centuries of chaos. Think of modern examples. South Korea, one of the poorest nations in 1960. Today, it's a technological giant. Why? Because they invested in education that teaches thinking. They didn't just teach what to think. They taught how to think. They understood what America and much of the West is now forgetting. If you don't train your population to think critically, they will be ruled by those who don't want them to think at all. Meanwhile, look at Venezuela, a nation with the world's largest oil reserves. Collapsed not because of scarcity, but because of short-term thinking and the destruction of trust in any expertise. It's not about resources. It's about choices. Venice lasted 1,000 years because they built governance systems that rewarded patience and punished impulsiveness. They didn't hope people would act wisely. They made it necessary to act wisely. That's the difference between collapse and renewal. So what does that mean for you? It means this. Civilizational collapse is not a passive fate. It's a choice we make every day. When we choose comfort over truth, when we choose emotional validation over complexity, when we choose ego over inquiry. But every collapse has a crack, and every crack is a chance for light to enter. You don't need to fix the world alone, but you can protect your mind. You can train your children to think. You can support institutions that value reason. You can reward honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. You can challenge your own beliefs. Because no civilization is renewed from the top down. It's rebuilt from the inside out. One conversation at a time. One choice at a time. One mind at a time. And the first mind to change might be your own.